This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
Welcome to I Don't Need an Acting Class with Milton Justice.
Before we start class, I did want to answer this particular question. I have always sort of felt like I need an acting podcast where I just vent because of all the bad teachers. Because it drives me insane. It's like if you want to get me going, it's just like tell me something that a teacher said, and it's just like you can watch me just start to boil up. My latest cause celeb is Ivana Chubbuck, who I consider to be one of the most dangerous people that ever lived. And so she's very popular in Europe now, I understand, for having said, "You are enough." And apparently her class is a celebration of everybody being in pain. And her belief is that at the bottom of great acting is you being able to suffer. And of course, this just also gets me going. Anyway, David Mamet is another one that drives me insane. And I remember when David Mamet's book came out, it was as if the entire artistic community of New York went up in flames. My friend Garland Wright was the artistic director of the Guthrie. He wrote something. I mean, it was like everybody was writing this thing. And it was just because, of course, David Mamet said, it's all in the text, don't build anything. And of course, I thought to myself, if anybody approached the David Mamet play like that, the play would suck. I mean, seriously, one of the first plays I ever did for Stella in class was A Life in the Theater. And I've never worked so hard in my life. I mean, it was just building a past and making a character choice, because there's nothing in the play. It's an older actor and a younger actor. At any rate, so of course I believe David Mamet is really full of shit. And there's a whole school here based on his book and his teaching. And, one wonders why acting is so mediocre. All right, so the question that this person asked is not an uninteresting question. And oddly enough, it came up the other day. And he says, is it acceptable to add your own specific circumstances or facts to bear down on generalities in the script? And here's the thing. There is a play that exists. Sometimes I use the word general circumstances. Sometimes I use the word the world. But there is a world that exists in the play. And what happens in that world is you have a character that does or does not function in that world. But if you don't know what the world is, if you don't have a connection to what the world is, then there's no way you can possibly respond. And if you are inventing circumstances in order to be more effective, in my mind, it's like you're defeating the purpose. The problem here is it's the idea of playing an effect. And I have seen this all the time. I've sat in on acting classes before where the teacher said to, where a teacher said to a girl working on a scene, and she said, I want you to act like that your partner has a big bird on her shoulder and you're trying to get the bird to fly away. And I'm thinking to myself, you are joking, right? And so you know, the girl is going, Whose yacht is this? The Duke of Westminster. I mean, it's like she's trying to get this bird off the shoulder. So what it tells me, and the reason I think it's dangerous, is what it tells me is by inventing circumstances, you are trying to force an effect. That is a lie. That has absolutely nothing to do with the play. Is it acting? No. And it's the reason I press you all so much about research, because you're building a world. And the more you know about that world, the more it helps you. I had this horrible experience yesterday with an actor I will probably never work with again. It was a 2-line audition. He was playing a pharmacist, and he was supposed to look at the sheriff who wasn't wearing a mask. So I guess now we're going to have a series of pandemic movies. So he looked, and I kept saying, no, you have to respond to it. It's even in the stage directions. And so he turned to look, and then he finally said to me, do something to scare me. And I said, I'm sorry, what? And he said, like throw your hands in the air and go, ah! Because he said, then I can respond to that. And oh my God, talk about venting. You should have heard me. I said, I am not a teacher who's about tricks. And I said, absolutely. If you can't live off the truth of the fact that the sheriff of your town does not wear a mask during the pandemic, then you shouldn't get this part. I think probably we came to it. But I mean, that's, but that's it. And there's this whole world of teachers that are like, here's a trick. Act like there's a parrot on somebody's shoulder. Here's another trick. Have somebody, pull their pants down. It's got nothing to do with acting. And, to me, that's the issue. None of it has anything to do with acting. You really do have to know about the world. But you also have to be able to look at this world and be able to know how my character lives in the world.
Hey everybody, it's Walker. I just want to make sure you have all of the latest info about upcoming classes. So Milton will be teaching a 1-month technique class March 2nd through March 23rd. So this will be held once a week on Saturdays, 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time over Zoom. And then Milton will be in Berlin doing a 1-week intensive. So if you're interested in either of these, just shoot me an email, questionsformilton@gmail.com, and I will get you signed up.
I have a question for you, Milton, based on what you're discussing, and I'm curious your thoughts, which is two. One is, of course, of the Tangoff, who used the whole justification, in a sense, by any means, outside the script as well. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that. But more so, after our wonderful, intense script analysis that we do ourselves and the research, blah, 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 blah. At what point do you think then that the idea of going outside the script to stimulate what you've sensed in the script is valid?
Okay. That is such a brilliant question. Here is how I understand it. What I am looking for is behavior. And in my mind, there are 3 places we go for it. I go to my own experience, I go to experience I've seen, and I go to my imagination. And the imagination, I think, includes all of it. So, but the question is, when I go to my own experience, what am I looking for? And what I am looking for is, what did I do? And in a sense, it's what action did I play? So, in other words, in a play about loss, and I say, all right, this is a play about loss. And by the way, you don't always have to do this. Sometimes, and I've said it before, sometimes I think the technique is there to help me when I get lost. But let's say I'm doing a play about loss. And so I'm thinking to myself, where have I experienced loss? And so I may go to when my best friend died of AIDS in the 90s. So I think to myself, so what did I do? I kept holding on. I couldn't let go. I held on and I held on. Okay, I leave my life. And I say, all right, the nature of loss, let's say, is to hold on. And so that is, in other words, I go to what is doable. What action did I play? And then if I go to, and sometimes, and I have to say, sometimes it's like, I would hate to have to go back to when friends died in the 90s, because so many did. It's like, I couldn't do it. I don't want to go there. So then, I say, all right, I'm going to go for what I've seen. What can I steal from what I've seen? Now, often I use that. Often I use that. I was working with an actor who's now famous, Amanda, as a Hallmark a Hallmark Christmas actor. And at any rate, and he was working on a king. And so I thought, well, I knew for a fact we weren't going to go to this royal family to figure out how a king behaves. And so we went to the Metropolitan Museum and we looked at paintings. And looking at these paintings and going from painting to painting and trying to figure out what is doable, I went, oh my God, they're all relaxed. Which is not how I would have thought you play a king. And I said, my God, they own the country. Of course they're relaxed. And so, that was, and I said, okay, so I've stolen from a painting. I was working on a monologue from the play Beckett. For Stella, I know. We know all the same. I love you, Douglas, because you know all the plays I know.
I did that play in Bobby Lewis's class.
Oh my God!
What a joy! What a joy!
Oh my God! But Stella had me go to St. Patrick's Cathedral. She wanted me to go to St. Patrick's Cathedral and then come back to class. And she said, "What did you get from St. Patrick's Cathedral?" And I said, everything in Gothic architecture reaches up to God. And she said, that's the action. But you see what I mean? Look, we educate ourselves so much. We educate ourselves so much because eventually we find, my God, we can learn from anything. I find, I don't like animal exercises at all because I'm not an animal person. But I can still go to the zoo and find it interesting. About the worst thing I ever did was when I was working on a Noel Coward play, I was watching a llama, and I stole the lip. Whose yacht is that? But do you know what I mean? It's like, it's.
Did it work?
Yes. Oh, it was so much fun. I mean, there wasn't, I mean,
Well, that's important though, right?
well, yes, but I mean, that's the thing. It's like you start to steal from this and you steal from this and you steal from this and you steal from this. I mean, so it's like, this is really complicated. Acting is really not for the faint of heart. It's no wonder we have so few good actors, because this is difficult. Yeah, go ahead, Walker.
I just, what you're talking about, research to find choices that you love, is not adding your own specific circumstances or facts. And I think sometimes those two ideas are conflated, and I'm speaking to the guy who wrote the question in.
Well, look, here's the thing. God, I mean, this is how complicated acting is. If you are inventing your own circumstance, what you're doing is pushing towards an effect. But the thing about it is it the play? And to me, that's what all these things are doing. That's what I'm going to play this scene from Richard III as if I only have 5 minutes to murder Clarence. It's like, is it because Mr. Shakespeare's scene didn't give you enough to play and you have to invent something? I mean, that to me is always the question. It's like, whoa, I'm sorry, you think you needing 5 minutes? And I got to tell you something. This happens all the time. I even think I talk about it in my book. I was so horrified. Jimmy, a kid named Jimmy from New Zealand, was building a scene that takes place on the hills of Normandy, for God's sakes. And so they called them tutors in New Zealand. And the tutor said to him, just imagine that it's your mother's lawn. And he said, and the tutor mentioned how much more connected I was, imagining it was my mother's lawn. And I thought, well, of course you're more connected. But my God, the play is about standing on the cemetery at Normandy. I mean, it's sort of like, it's not just about connecting. It is about connecting, but it is about connecting to the play you're doing, to the given circumstance, to the facts, getting to the experience of the facts. That's what it's about. And if you're substituting or adding something that you think will make it more urgent, then, sure, but it's not the play. And quite honestly, that's what you want. If you're looking to acting, if you really are looking to be an actor, then what you really want to do is what acting is. And what acting is all of these things that have to do with there is a play that exists. And I live in that play. And I live in that play, and I'm very interesting. And I kick ass. You want that moment, goddammit. You want that moment where at the end of the play, the audience is stunned. You want that moment where they have had this experience where they've learned something, they have a new revelation, they have something else that they didn't know before. That's what you want. And oddly enough, you are the only one that can bring it. I think part of it is you have to know that one of your jobs as an actor is to improve as a person. And you have to know you. If you're not expanding as a person, if you're not, I mean, God, every acting teacher says, read. I have notes from Klorman about directors having to be, it's like, art, music, literature. It's like when Stella made me go to St. Patrick's to work on that play, I had to know about architecture. And I mean, that's the thing. You have to know all of this. It's the reason it's so fabulous to work on. And we're so lucky we have YouTube and we have documentaries and we have Netflix documentaries, and Caleb can come over to my house thinking we're going to have a pleasant evening together, and I make him watch a documentary. And so because he's doing a play about somebody who just came out of World War II. And so, I mean, that's it. But the thing about it is, it's not just knowing about it. And this is, fellas, the really, really difficult thing. And it's the reason I've been reading these articles on empathy. I have to know what my dude or my dudette experienced. And it has very little to do with anything I experienced.